shocking revelation, why Paul identified as a slave, the devastating truth they don't tell you. The air was thick with apprehension, the kind that prickled at the back of your neck and made your heart race. It was the day Paul decided to reveal his hidden truth. A truth so explosive that whispers erupted throughout the small town, igniting a wildfire of curiosity. How could a man living in the 21st century ever identify as a slave? Was it a plea for attention, or was there something deeper hiding in his anguish? The townsfolk gathered like moths to a flame, eyes wide, breath held. Paul stood before them, the flicker of a candle illuminating the haunted look in his eyes. Strange characteristics defined Paul. He wore tattered clothes that seemed long forgotten, shadows weaving between the threads. His hands, calloused and worn, told of hard labor, yet they were forced to lay still, as whispers filled the air. He had long hair, unkempt, often hiding his face, but when the lantern light caught his eyes, there was a glimmer of despair mixed with something alarming. Could it be defiance? No one knew. People shifted, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others clenching their fists, emotions swirling in a chaotic dance. Then it happened. He spoke, voice trembling like a frail leaf caught in a storm. His words echoed like thunder, "I am a slave. Not by chains, but in the prison of my own fears." Gasps erupted, like a sudden flash of lightning illuminating the night sky. Who did he think he was? Some murmured their disapproval, while others leaned in closer, captivated by the sheer rawness of his pain. Faces contorted, voices hushed, the tension built like a looming storm ready to break. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Paul's tale twisted deeper with every word, revealing fragments of a life lived in shadows. He spoke of the societal shackles that chained his spirit, memories clawing at him like an unrelenting beast. The audience inched closer, hands twitching and faces taut, grappling with the weight of his truth. Muffled sobs slipped among the crowd, eyes glistening not just from tears, but from a profound understanding that echoed in their hearts, the secret burning beneath the skin. What could Paul possibly reveal next? With each revelation, more questions stirred inside, more confusion about the nature of freedom itself. A hint of rage blended with sympathy among the townsfolk. Was this a cry for help? What had driven him to this confession? The palpable tension wrapped around them like a thick fog, leaving everyone desperate for answers as they pondered just how far Paul would go to expose the core of his turbulent soul. But would they dare to listen? Or would they shy away, burdened by their own judgments, caging the truth of a man who felt like he was drowning in his own identity? The audience remained frozen, teetering on the edge of perilous understanding, waiting for Paul to reveal whether freedom could ever be truly grasped. As silence blanketed the crowd, Paul took a shaky breath, the weight of his truth pressing down on him like a thick fog. He locked eyes with a few familiar faces, friends, neighbors who had previously shown fleeting kindness but now bore expressions twisted by confusion and fear. The unsettling murmurs grew louder, threatening to drown him out. But his purpose burned bright, fueling his determination to continue. "I was born into a world," he said slowly, voice breaking from the surge of emotion, "where every expectation felt like a noose around my neck. I grew up hearing that I had to conform. Fit into the mold. Smile. Be the good son. The disciplined student." His words dripped with bitterness, cutting through the air like shards of glass. He looked down at his hands. They trembled. "But in trying to please everyone, I lost myself. I became a prisoner to their judgments, their dreams for me." That's what felt like chains. His gaze lifted, sweeping over the crowd, aching for understanding. Some faces mirrored his pain, while others twisted into masks of disdain. "Do you know what it feels like to be free? Really free? Paul pressed, desperation leaking into his tone. A few in the back exchanged glances, their bodies tensed, ready to sprint away if this truth became too heavy to bear. A girl in a denim jacket stepped forward, biting her lip. But, Paul, you have a choice. Why not just break free? Her voice trembled, but her bravery sparked something in the room. The crowd started shifting again, the tension morphing into curiosity. Because, Paul replied, it's not that simple. Societal chains aren't visible, they snare you from the inside. It's like drowning without water. His voice echoed with an unsettling depth, resonating with those who battled their own demons. The lurching silence was punctuated by uneasy breaths, each one wrought with the burgeoning understanding that Paul was onto something. Suddenly, a voice shouted from the back, taunting and raw. You're just making excuses. Life's tough for everyone. Laughter followed, a cruel ripple that scraped against the fragile air. The girl in the denim jacket flinched, her resolve visibly cracking. Life is tough, yes, Paul agreed, fierceness igniting in his eyes. But true hardship is beyond a rough life. It lingers, festering, wrenching apart the soul when no one is looking. Each word landed like a punch, gasps swirling through the crowd with every truth unveiled. As shadows danced in and out of the lantern's glow, Paul felt the weight of collective burdens pushing against him. Voices buzzed, a cacophony of nervous energy rising higher. In one sudden moment, uncertainty took root, blossoming into something more, a flicker of hope edged with fear. What if they began to see? What if they grasped the enslaving expectations that existed even in their own lives? Then, just as the tension peaked, Paul closed his eyes momentarily, steeling himself. But understand this: breaking free isn't just an act of will. It demands terrifying honesty, and not everyone is ready for it. His breath came in sharp bursts, an open challenge hanging in the air, and just as hope burgeoned, then pressed against the walls of fear, Paul declared, "Are you ready to face the truth you're too afraid to see?" The question hung ominously, reverberating deep within the crowd, as their hearts raced with the uncertainty of possibility. As silence enveloped them once more, something shifted in the air, a bond formed through mutual recognition of fears and uncertainties. And in that moment, no one could have anticipated the turmoil that would ensue next, as Paul prepared to unfurl the most shocking secret lurking beneath his narrative. Would they follow him, or would they retreat, terrified of the depths he was willing to unveil? With a swift, decisive breath, Paul stepped off the precipice of his own confinement, ready to unleash the truth that had shackled him for years. The lantern's flickering glow was like a spotlight on his soul, the warmth battling the chill of judgment in the air. He sensed a shift, an almost electric anticipation crackling in the crowd. "I want to tell you about the day I really understood what it meant to be free," Paul began, his voice steadying into something more powerful. "And that day it wasn't about breaking chains or defying expectations. It was about the moment I realized I wasn't just living for others." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some leaned in closer, drawn to the gravity of his words, while others wore looks of apprehension, the intensity unsettling them. "It happened when I was 15, he continued, eyes still piercing through the gloom. "I was standing at a crossroads, both literally and figuratively. My father wanted me to pursue engineering, to follow in his steps. But I had dreams of my own." The hiss of disbelief came like a whisper from the back. "Dreams? What do you mean?" It was a girl's voice, filled with skepticism. Paul swallowed hard, memories rushing back, late-night scribbles in a notebook, the drawings that spilled from his mind, a life that wasn't a carbon copy of his father's. "I wanted to be an artist," he confessed, the words raw on his tongue. "And that scared the hell out of me. Because I was terrified of what it meant to choose differently, to face the disapproval, to turn my back on everything I'd been taught." A prickling silence hung thick in the air, punctuated by the sharp gasps from those who could relate. It was as if they were catching glimpses of their own fears reflected back at them, each one echoing in his confession. "But that moment at the crossroads wasn't just about dreams," he pressed. "It made me confront a deeper truth. The binds that tied me weren't just familial expectations, they were the remnants of societal norms, the unspoken rules that insisted we all walk the same path without question. People exchanged bewildered glances. The hushed tone of realization swept through the crowd. Was it possible that they too were trapped in their own carefully curated lives? I discovered I was a slave to my own fears, Paul continued, voices softening around him. To the fear of being unloved, of being a disappointment. That day, I took a chance. I confronted my father. It didn't end well, but I finally felt something shift within me. His breath hitched, remembering the pain and the release of finally speaking his truth, however bitter. I told him I wanted to be an artist. That night, as his anger exploded like a thunderstorm, a part of me felt set free. Because I owned my choice. Even if it cost me his love. Gasps. A collective breath. The crowd's skepticism began to erode, replaced with something more profound, understanding. None of this is easy, Paul admitted, a fierceness igniting once more. Freedom isn't the absence of chains, it's the willingness to bear the consequences of your choices. It's about finding the courage to live authentically no matter the cost. With that, the air shifted again. Faces lit up with flickering courage matched by creeping fear. Just as it seemed his words were settling, a figure surged forward from the back, a wild look in their eyes. But what if your truth kills you? They shouted, and the crowd froze, shockwaves pushing through them like a sudden gust of wind. The moment hung pregnant, the possibilities spiraling. How would they respond? Would they retreat from truth once again, or would Paul's courage inspire them to confront their own shackles? Because sometimes, Paul declared, heart pounding, the path to freedom is paved with the ashes of what you thought you knew. Now the eyes of the crowd were wide, and a heavy silence blanketed the moment. The girl in the denim jacket trembled slightly, her face reflected the internal battle brewing. Would they dare to ask the question buried deep within them all, the question that might finally lead them to their own truths? What would happen next if they chose to confront the darkness together? The eruption of uncertainty felt palpable, thickening the air around them. The wild-eyed figure, a boy barely older than Paul, had pierced the rising courage with his fear. What if your truth kills you? He had cried, the weight of those words hanging like a noose. Paul scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. He saw uncertainty, fear, and something else, a longing for liberation. He could feel their breaths, quick and shallow, caught in a moment of indecision. You live one time. He shouted, letting the challenge ring out. You can't spend it shackled by doubt. The girl in the denim jacket stepped forward, her eyes blazing with emotion. But what if we lose everything? What if, in seeking freedom, we find only ruin? Her voice wavered, revealing the turmoil beneath her convictions. Paul felt the heat of her fear, and yet he knew he had one chance to break through. What we fear most can't always kill us. It can bring us to life. Each word rang out, louder, as if trying to drown out the trepidation flooding the space between them. Living under someone else's shadow now that eats you alive. I don't want to live in fear. I want to be more than a replica of someone else's dream. A murmur cascaded through the crowd, a blend of hope laced with uncertainty. Yet the boy with the wild eyes took another step, his voice rising against the tide. We say that, but what if it destroys our family? Our future? The defiance hung in the air, igniting sparks of disagreement as people began to split into factions. Some were ready to rally behind Paul, while others held tight to their fears, their loyalty tethered to familiar chains. Is the cost of truth worth shackling yourself forever? Paul posed, heart racing, the challenge igniting his spirit. You can't grow into the person you're meant to be if you're constantly tethered to expectations. It's excruciating, but this is how we begin to blossom. We must embrace the risk. Skepticism lingered, but voices among the crowd began to shift. I always felt like I had to follow my parents' path, a voice said softly, breaking the tension. Heads nodded, Murmurs of shared rebellion fluttered like moths to flame. Paul seized the moment. My father's anger cut deep, but you know what? It forced me to decide. And I chose me. Every syllable echoed with conviction. Choose yourselves. Choose your fears. Stand up to them. Because on the other side, that's where you find your power. Yet just as the tide seemed poised to turn in his favor, a figure stepped into the lantern's light, an unexpected presence. This is madness. A woman's voice boomed. She towered over the crowd, eyes blazing. Your truth could destroy what we have built. Isn't that worth considering? Silence blanketed the scene again, tension weaving through the atmosphere as the crowd wavered. Faces reflected confusion, their thoughts spinning like tops on fragile ground. Paul took a deep breath, adrenaline surging. What's in jeopardy is the life we never lived. How many more dreams have to die quietly while we cling to assumptions? It's harder to live for ourselves, yes, but it's the only way to live fully. But as he pressed on, the questions in the back of the crowd grew louder. What does it mean to live fully if it costs us everything? Just then, the girl in the denim jacket stepped forward again, her voice steadying. So, what do we do now? What's the next step? And with that question hanging thick in the air, they all leaned in, hearts pounding in unison, ready to confront the abyss that lay ahead. Would they embrace the challenge together, or would they falter under the weight of fear? Paul gulped, feeling the weight of his answer spiraling within him. The looming truth felt like a fog settling in, thick and impenetrable. And as he searched for the words to guide them, a chill crept down his spine. What if embracing their truth brought more chaos than clarity? The crowd held its breath. What would they choose? The moment hung, ripe with potential and peril. Paul's voice broke through the silence like a shard of glass. We start by talking. We share our stories, our real stories. The crowd shifted, uncertainty buzzing like a static current. The girl in the denim jacket searched his eyes, waiting. But what if our stories tear us apart? Her question dripped with hesitation. There's power in truth. But only if we dare to face it together. Paul shot back, his pulse racing. A wave of energy cascaded through him, igniting resolve in his voice. Tell your fears. Share your past. It's the only way we'll discover who we are. As the first volunteer stepped forward, Paul breathed a sigh of relief. A wiry man, shaking yet willing, shared his tale of suffocating expectations from a father who never approved. The crowd leaned in, eyes wide, tethered by a collective heartbeat. I thought I was the only one, a voice murmured from the back. Another story began, this time from a woman whose dreams had been strangled by obligations. With each tale, the atmosphere shifted, fear was transforming into daring vulnerability. But not all were swept away by the tide of confession. The boy with wild eyes pushed through the crowd, panic etched across his face. Hold on. What if their truths connect to consequences? What if we stir something we can't control? His words snapped like a whip, scattering whispers of hope. It's better to know than to stay in the dark. Paul countered, adrenaline spiking inside him. We can't hide any longer. Facing these truths is how we defeat our demons. And sometimes he hesitated, the weight of his next words heavy. Sometimes, freedom lies in the pain we discover. A pregnant pause filled the air, pregnant with anticipation. Then the woman who had opposed Paul stepped forward again, her demeanor softened yet firm. You speak of transformation, yet how many will pay for it? What about the families torn apart? The friendships lost? Her voice was a sharp knife. It cut into Paul's heart, and for a fleeting moment, doubt clouded his vision. He could hear the rustling of voices, whispers woven with angst. We gain strength through connection, not division. He shouted, realizing how fragile their unity felt. Facing our truths can tear us apart, yes. But it can also build bridges we never knew were possible. Another wave of stories erupted, each more staggering than the last. Illustrations of despair mingled with sparks of hope. It was like weighing anchors on a fishing boat, speckled with grease and shine. Paul's chest swelled as they shared visceral memories, raw and nerve-wrenching. Here they were, exchanging their shadows for light, just when it seemed they were cresting a wave of revelation. A loud crash echoed from behind the crowd. A figure unknown and imposing burst through, raising an arm, their shadow flickering like a dark veil against the lantern's glow. Enough. The voice was gruff, stern like a thunderclap. You think you can unravel what has been built? You're playing with fire. And if you get burned, it won't be just you who suffers. Gasps ricocheted through the crowd, eyes darting. The girl in the denim jacket stepped back instinctively. Paul's heart pounded. Who was this intruder? What had they come to protect? Don't let them intimidate you. He shouted, buoyed by an inner strength. This is your moment. Stand by your truths. Show them we will not be silenced. But the tension grew, mingling with primal fear, clawing at their spirits as they balanced on the brink of chaos. Would the group stand firm against the intruder, or crumble under the weight of old fears? Paul's breath hitched in his throat as he strained to hear the crowd's thoughts, the air thick with a decision that echoed far beyond their gathering. What would they choose to protect, and at what cost? As eyes fixated on the looming figure, the electric charge of disbelief hung poised in the air. The stakes crescendoed, and within that moment, everything shattered. The figure stepped forward, slicing through the charged air with controlled authority. Paul felt every heartbeat echoing in the silence that descended, a weight heavier than the just occurred chaos. The crowd's breath caught, uncertainty rippling through them. Look at you. The stranger barked, voice cracking like a whip. Caught in your little circle of pity. You think sharing your pain will free you? Just makes you easier to manipulate. Paul felt his resolve falter. Who was this person? The skin on his arms prickled, a sense of danger washing over him. The murmurs of the crowd grew frantic, a tide pulling against them. Stay strong. Paul urged, speaking to the gravelly walls of fear surrounding them. We're in this together. But the crowd's eyes were glued to the newcomer, his raw energy seeping into their thoughts. You want freedom? The stranger continued, voice low and menacing. Then face the truth, nobody gets out unscathed. You think you're pursuing honesty, but all you're doing is digging your own grave. What was this winding rhetoric? Paul wanted to lash out, but the man's power was like a commanding storm. Who was casting shadows over the gathering? Enough. The woman from before shouted, stepping out from the crowd. We're not afraid of our stories. Her footing was sure, voice steadier than Paul's own trembling heart. The stranger's smirk held darkness. You think you have the will to accept? He paused, glancing over the crowd, the burdens that come with each confession. A ripple of doubt washed through Paul. He was standing on shaky ground, surrounded by people sharing their hearts. Was he really prepared for where this could lead? Then, the wild-eyed boy shouted, "He's right. We don't know what lies in our families' pasts. What if these truths have consequences we can't control?" Enough. Paul shouted, raising his voice, battling the tide of uncertainty. Enough of this second-guessing. Our stories are ours to share. If we don't take the leap now, when will we be free? The stranger's laugh was cruel. You think there's freedom at the end of this journey? You might find chains waiting instead. The atmosphere thickened, like the air before a summer storm. I am not afraid, the woman continued, though Paul could hear the tremor behind her fierce words. I choose to face my truth no matter the cost. Paul saw more eyes dart fearfully from the stranger to him, seeking reassurance but also looking for a way out. He felt the weight of those stares, it felt like a pressure cooker about to burst. Gather your truth, but know this. The intruder snarled. You're dicing with fate. The ties that bind could snap at any moment, leaving you all raw and exposed. Then let them snap. Paul yelled back, anger burning to life within him. Let us find out the truths we've been hiding. If we can face the hurt, we can forge a new beginning. Could he summon enough courage? Could they withstand the storm brewing in both the room and the hearts of those present? As murmurs surged through the gathered crowd, the wild-eyed boy steadied himself next to Paul. If we're going to do this, he whispered, we need to do it now. Together. But the stranger, sensing the shift, took a step back. Be careful, you're inviting the past to dictate your future. What will become of you when every secret you uncover morphs you into what you fear the most? The crowd held its breath, straddling a line of uncertainty. Paul's heart raced wildly, every pulse felt like a countdown. What truths lingered, hidden and festering? A shout broke from the depths of the crowd, let us see. Let us see. The echo resonated. Paul shivered. The road stretched ahead, filled with uncharted territory. As the murmurs escalated, revealing and unsettling, the looming figure stepped back, half concealed in darkness. You'll wish you hadn't, he warned before turning away, fading into the shadows, leaving behind an electrified silence that twisted like a knife. What had Paul unleashed? The tension vibrated on the brink of chaos. Would the group continue to peel back the layers of their trauma? And could they survive the repercussions of what was revealed? With anticipation heavy in the air, a single thought persisted: what were they truly afraid to uncover? The murmurings hung thick in the air as the crowd turned to Paul, eyes wide and anxious. He could feel the intensity of their stares weighing on him, each gaze a plea for guidance mixed with their own dread. They wanted answers, but Paul was just as lost. Paul, a quiet voice came from behind him. It was the woman who had stood against the stranger. Her name escaped him, but her resolve lingered. What do we do now? The question hung, heavy with expectation. Paul felt a lump form in his throat. This moment held the power to fracture or forge something unknown. He inhaled sharply, nudging his fear aside, his heart racing in rhythm with the crowd's anxiety. Let us share, he finally said, his voice low but gaining strength. Let us talk about our stories, what we've buried. If secrets hold power over us, then it's time to take it back. A soft shockwave rippled through the group as they digested his words, faces flickering from fear to curiosity. But the thought of delving into painful histories made their brows furrow with anxiety. What if we aren't ready? The wild-eyed boy asked again, his voice trembling slightly. Then let us help each other be ready. Paul urged, meeting the boy's gaze, his intensity fueling the moment. It's okay to feel afraid. We need to work through it together. It's like pulling a thorn embedded deep in our sides. If we do it right, we just might heal. In that moment, something shifted in the atmosphere. People began to step closer, drawn by an unexplainable hunger for honesty. A heavy silence ensued, broken only by the sound of an inhaled breath. A woman stepped forward, her features lined with a mix of trepidation and determination. I never knew my father, she said hesitantly, voice trembling. He left before I was even born. Mom always said he was a monster, but what if I'm just like him? Her eyes darted from one face to another. A hush settled further, eyes widening as Paul felt the resonance of her words. No one here will judge you, he assured her, the words spilling out like a balm on a fresh wound. Sharing these shadows makes them less impactful. We're allowing the darkness to see the light. Another voice emerged, a man with scars and a haunted gaze. I grew up with a father who thrived on brutality. He used fear as power. I've pushed away everyone close to me ever since because I'm terrified of becoming him. The air became electric with revelations. Each new word unraveling threads woven tightly: pain, anger, regret. It was a tapestry of human experience laid bare. Then, like a fire ignited by a single spark, others began to speak. The estranged son of an addict, the daughter of a strict parent, the survivor of a toxic relationship, all seeking solace in sharing their truths. Paul felt the knot in his chest loosen as each story filled the air, weaving something new among them. Each confession seemed to chip away at the shadow of fear that lingered after the stranger's departure. But as the words flowed, an unsettling feeling slithered back into the fringes of his mind. A sliver of doubt lurked alongside the clarity they sought. He could see it glinting in the eyes of others, the fear that unbound truths would open doors they couldn't close again. "Are we ready?" The woman who spoke earlier asked again, her voice now caught between hope and hesitation. Then, the silence crashed back, shattered by the sudden sound of shuffling footsteps. Eyes snapped toward the doorway as a figure stepped back into the light, a flicker of familiarity draped in shadow. It was him again. The stranger, a faint smile ghosting his lips, stepped forward once more, the atmosphere contorting. "I see you haven't learned," he said coolly, his voice steady. "You think healing comes just from confessions? You revel in your newfound courage, but only the foolish dive into waters they cannot swim in." The crowd recoiled, the tension radiating. Paul's heart dropped, something terrible loomed, following their open vulnerabilities. "Who are you?" a voice called from the back, filled with defiance. But the stranger stepped closer, eyes gleaming as he answered, "I am your past and your future. And trust me, you aren't ready for what's in store." What had he come to reveal? What chilling truth lay beneath their collected breaths? As fear gripped softer hearts, Paul felt the room tighten around him, pulsing in anticipation of the confrontation to come. Could anyone withstand the floodgates that would open with those hidden truths? And what remained lurking, waiting for them in the dark? The stranger's presence sent a wave of unease rippling through the crowd. Paul felt it settle in his stomach like a stone. He took a step forward, needing to assert himself, to ground this fraying energy, but the weight of the stranger's words bore down on him. "Why are you here?" Paul called out, his voice striking through the charged air. "What do you want from us?" The stranger chuckled softly, a sound devoid of warmth. "What I want is irrelevant, Paul. It's what you need to confront that matters." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, gauging the tremors of fear dancing in their eyes. "You think by sharing your secrets you'll emerge free of burdens, but you're merely opening the door for the true monsters." At those words, a shudder spread through the group. Some shifted their weight uneasily, their earlier courage faltering under the shadow he cast. Paul saw a flicker of doubt cross the faces of those who had just shared their pains and regrets. The bravado that once surged in the room began to dissipate. "Monsters?" The woman who spoke before echoed, her voice shaky. "You speak as if we're trapped in chains." "Chains?" "Yes, but not the kind you're thinking of," the stranger replied, stepping further into the light. "These are chains of your own making, rooted in fear, shame, and denial." His smile twisted, a dark curve that felt more like a threat than an invitation. "You share stories like they're badges of honor. But what if I told you those stories could cage you even tighter?" Paul's heart raced. What truths lay hidden in the depths of their pasts that could shatter them if exposed? He glanced at the faces around him, some hardened in anger, others wavering in uncertainty. He had tried to build a bridge through shared pain, but now it felt like they were standing on the brink of a precipice. "Enough." Paul stepped forward again, voice rising. "You don't get to come here and tear us down. We're willing to confront our demons. We deserve to be heard." The stranger raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "And what happens when you hear things you wish you hadn't? When the memories you thought were buried rise to claim their foothold in your lives? Are you ready for that reckoning?" The air crackled with tension. Faces paled as understanding began to dawn. Paul felt panic begin to swell again, a familiar tightness coiling in his chest. He wanted to pull them back from this edge, but he could see they were too far gone, teetering on the cusp of discovery, as if they were drawn to the thrill of facing their own truths. "Let him speak," one voice finally broke through the wild-eyed boy who had first posed the question. A nod from him catalyzed the crowd to turn their attention back towards the stranger. "We need to know. If we're going to confront the past, we might as well dive deeper, right?" Ah, the bravery of the youth, the stranger laughed, though there was a menace lurking in his mirth. Or is it folly? He turned his focus back to Paul, a glimmer of challenge in his eyes. If they wish to tread this treacherous path, then so be it. But make sure you have the strength to bear the weight of what you uncover. And with that, a heavy silence fell again, thick and suffocating. Paul's resolve mingled with doubt, battling for dominance. What truths lay buried? What horrors would they dredge up in their search for healing? He was not just fighting for himself, but for each of them a collective vulnerability that could turn into a collective disaster. Who will be the first? The stranger asked, tone dripping with anticipation. Who will plunge into the icy depths where the past lies waiting? What shocking truths will you unearth when you pull back the curtain? A ripple of nervous chatter buzzed through the crowd, yet an unmistakable pull tugged at Paul's gut. It was now or never. If they were to embrace their lives fully, they needed to break past these walls, but as the shadows inched closer and the air thickened with expectation, Paul realized that uncertainty consumed him too. What revelations waited in the dark corners of their shared histories? And was anyone truly ready for what lay ahead? The silence stretched, suffocating, as if the world had vanished, leaving only the stranger and their collective pulse. Paul scanned the crowd, a sea of doubt washing over familiar faces. He felt their fear like a living thing. It slithered between them, tightening its grip, almost palpable. Who will go first? The stranger pressed, a dark gleam in his eyes. Is there not one brave enough to plunge into the depths of their own darkness? Paul's heart thundered in his chest. Wasn't there someone ready to speak? A single voice broke the hesitation, cutting through like a knife. I will, said a woman, her voice cracking. Caroline, the one who shared the story of her abusive past. She stepped forward, determination lined with fear painted across her features. Biting her lip, she looked out at the crowd, then back at the stranger. I want to share. The stranger's smile widened, as if she had just handed him a gift. Ah, but are you prepared for what you might unleash? You might find that what you think lies within may be more formidable than the lies you've been telling yourself. Caroline hesitated, her gaze flickering to Paul, who nodded, urging her with his eyes. It's okay, he whispered. You can do this. Taking a deep breath, she gathered what courage she had. When I was a child, I thought I could escape. I told myself it was all just a nightmare, but her voice broke. The nightmares followed me, seeping into every corner of my life. As Caroline revealed her past, Paul watched the crowd. Some leaned in, captivated, while others recoiled slightly, as if her pain were a living creature they could feel creeping into their own skins. The air was thick with heartbreak and horror, secrets clawed at the edges, desperate to emerge. Do you know what it's like? She continued, voice trembling but fierce, to be a prisoner of your own memories. To wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, your own mind turning against you. I still hear the whispers, feel the hands gripping my soul. I didn't just suffer, I was chained, enslaved. Stop. A voice erupted from the back, laced with anger. It was one of the men from earlier, fists clenched in fury. Don't play the victim. You chose to share this. You want sympathy. You want to wallow. A murmur rippled through the audience. Paul felt the tension escalate, and it warmed the blood in his veins. No, she's trying to heal. He shouted, anger surging. We're all here to face our truths, not to belittle others' pain. The stranger observed the clash with icy delight, his eyes glinting. Ah, the divide begins. How delicious. Look closely at the cracks forming among you. This is the very essence of truth. The pain of one can manifest chaos in another, and is it not so, my friends? Paul felt trapped in a whirlwind. Caroline's truth hung heavy, almost tangible, but so too did the man's scorn. Could this all become the chaos the stranger warned about? Let her finish. He implored the crowd, hoping to unite them. Caroline swallowed hard, continuing with a quivering voice. I spent years hiding, pretending it didn't affect me. But it ate me alive. I felt like a slave to my trauma enough. The stranger interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. A servant to her own suffering. An identity formed in the chains you refuse to see. The crowd gasped, a shared intake of confusion, anger, and fear igniting the tension. Paul could feel it, a flash of understanding striking him, sizzling through the room. There was something profound in this chaos. What if the very act of confronting these demons could forge something new? Paul's breath hitched. Was the stranger right? Were they truly standing at the precipice? As Caroline's eyes welled with tears, Paul could see the fear flickering in her gaze, but also a glint of strength beginning to emerge. I will not be their slave any longer, she declared, defiance ringing in her words. The crowd erupted, some cheered while others bristled, still caught in the snare of the stranger's manipulative web. What do you think your cries will change? The stranger taunted, the smile growing wider with every ripple of tension. Are you prepared for every hidden truth to spill and weave its way back into your lives? Paul felt the earth shift beneath him, uncertainty mixing with a strange sense of purpose. What lay ahead would require more than they could fathom. The shadows were stretching, and he knew they were all teetering on the edge of something monumental. Will you stand together, or will you shatter apart? He posed aloud, urgency flowing through him. It's time to decide. And as the crowd swelled with whispers and harsh breaths, Paul braced himself for the consequences. Would they stand united, or would the truth fracture them beyond repair? In that moment, a question lingered like smoke: what truly awaited them in the shadows beyond? The crowd was a tumult of emotions, faces flickering with fear, hope, and defiance. Every eye turned to Paul, their collective heartbeats somehow syncing with his. Each person held tightly to their own fears, teetering on the precipice of revelation. Paul took his stand, heart pounding. The stranger's presence weighed heavily in the air, clutching at the edges of their courage. We can't hide any longer, Paul declared, voice steady. We've come too far. Caroline has shown us the way forward. We won't let fear tear us apart. Caroline nodded, her eyes blazing with that same fierce determination. I'm not here to seek sympathy. I stand here for every one of you who has felt trapped by your past. If it means fighting for freedom, then let us fight together. The atmosphere shifted, a jolt of energy coursing through the crowd. The woman who had spoken before stepped up beside Caroline. We speak not just for ourselves, but for those who believe being silent is easier, she said, her voice rising. No longer. We choose courage. You want us to break apart, don't you? Paul challenged the stranger, anger coiling in his gut. But we will not let you twist our truths into weapons against us. We are stronger together. Laughter echoed from the stranger, a low, threatening sound. Strength? Oh, how naive. You're forging brave faces, but the demons you awaken won't be so easily tamed. Paul glanced at the crowd, some faces were still shadowed with doubt. We know the risk, he said, softer now, his voice drawing them back in. But the pain of holding on is far worse than the fear of letting go. We cannot let our past dictate our future. Then, with a fire ignited in him, Paul called for one more step forward. Let us all share our truths. Let us break the silence together. A ripple of agreement washed over the crowd. One by one, they began to step forward. A man spoke of feeling inadequate, crushed under the weight of unrealized dreams. A young woman revealed her struggles with expectations, the chokehold they had on her spirit. Another shared the scars left by betrayal. Each story lanced through the murmurs, cutting through uncertainty. As they shared, the once held fears began to melt away, replaced by understanding, compassion, and shared vulnerability. Paul felt a swell of relief as the shadows retreated, crumbling under the warmth of their collective courage. The stranger watched, arms crossed, his expression shifting from amusement to irritation. You think this makes you stronger? He sneered. You'll regret unearthing these skeletons. Paul stepped closer, unwavering. Each skeleton we unearth allows us to step out of the dark. We take back our power with every truth we speak. In that moment, Paul felt aligned with them, the community bound by shared struggle, lifting one another through honesty. "Let the truths hang like weights," someone from the crowd shouted vehemently. "We're ready for the struggle. It's what we've been missing." Caroline smiled, clenched fists raised in solidarity. "We are not defined by our pain. We are defined by our choices." The crowd erupted with shouts of agreement. The stranger's glare hardened, and the air buzzed with the thrill of defiance. Backed by this new foundation, their truths intertwined, they felt the power that resided in unity. "Are you prepared for the consequences?" The stranger pressed one last time, eyes darting like a tempest. "What horrors await you?" Paul stepped forward, feeling the electricity in the air. "Every horror we face is a chance to grow stronger. It's not about avoiding pain, but embracing it." The stranger's face twisted in anger, betrayal, and disbelief as the crowd shifted their gaze, unfocused and resolute, on him. The man was but a flicker now, destined to fade in the light of their combined strength. And with one final rallying cry, Paul shouted, "Let us break those chains together. No more silence. No more shame." Cheering erupted, voices blended into an anthem of solidarity. The shadows twisted and blurred, retreating under the brilliance of their collective freedom. In that very moment, bonded by bravery, they stepped into their truths together. As the gathering began to disperse, conversations erupted, laughter mingled with tears, and the weight of burdens lifted like a cloud, revealing a sun-soaked sky of possibilities. Paul exchanged glances with Caroline, a silent acknowledgement between them. They had dared to embrace the quaking, raw honesty of life, paving the path towards something new. It wasn't just about gaining liberation from their pasts, it was about welcoming their journeys, however tumultuous they might be, and as the townsfolk filtered away, the air felt transformed. They were all forever changed, no longer afraid to shine a light on their truths. With a fierce grin, Paul took a step forward, immersed in the warmth of newfound hope. He had found his power, not in isolation, but nestled within the grand tapestry of shared stories. But on that note, let us not forget what got us here. Need to share this with 5 friends? You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next profound tale waiting to unfold. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm, and let us keep spreading the light together. Everyone deserves this journey. Flood that comment section with your thoughts and theories. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with the people you care about. Let us embrace every story, hand in hand.